Discover the Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast, hosted by Tiffany, Benitez, and Jordan Franklin. Here, the complexities of being a woman in the tech industry are unraveled through discussions on key issues, personal growth, and how to succeed despite systematic challenges. It's a source of empowerment and inspiration for all women at all stages of their tech careers. Good afternoon, and welcome to Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast. We are so excited to be joining you today and to have you meet our special guest, Nicole McMackin. We are so thrilled to have her join us today and to share some of the amazing experience that she has with us. Nicole is the CEO and president of Irvine Technology Company. It's a national diversity and equity and inclusion technology solutions. You guys know we're all about the DEI&B, so Nicole is the epitome of that. They are headquartered in Orange County, California. Nicole is a well-known speaker. She speaks all over the world, specifically around women in leadership, and she has developed a women in leadership program over the past 4 years. I know everyone hates sometimes when their accolades are called out, but this is really, really important because she is paving the way for so many of us to come. Nicole is the 2021 Los Angeles Times Business to Business Leadership Award, the 2020 Women in Technology Hollywood Woman of the Year, 2020 Bronze Stevie Award winner for Female Executive of the Year, the 2019 Top 30 Most Dynamic Leader Award from Boston Publishing, and is a contributing writer for the New York Daily News. Nicole has been featured recently in so many different articles: the AG Professional, Light Reading, Windows IT Pro, CPA, Practice Advisor, and she has a blog, she has a podcast, she is focusing on broadening and elevating the STEM conversation. And just above all things, Nicole is a champion of women's rights and equal treatment in the workplace. She's been nominated multiple times for the OCBI Women in Business Award, and she's been featured in the Professional Women's Magazine Entrepreneur. So Nicole, I know, again, it's always super uncomfortable to kind of have all of the things written and talked about, but you are an amazing woman, so I did not want to leave any of that out. But we are super excited to have you on the show today. And of all of those things, there is a theme, and it is that you are an InfluenceHER. And so we wanted to come talk to you a little bit about that today. Jordan, over to you.
Yeah. So, the purpose of our podcast is really around releasing an authentic view on what women are doing in the workforce, right? So what about InfluenceHER, and what are you doing with InfluenceHER that is really authentic and pushing women forward in our, workforce and their day-to-day lives and everything? It all goes together for us, right?
It does all go together. And thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for such a kind and warm introduction. And Jordan, I'm super excited to be here as well with you. And so I think what you touched on is authenticity. And authenticity is really important, not only for every human being, as you can imagine, but for women in particular, as they're seeking to elevate their careers. And I hear oftentimes a challenge of women and how they're showing up. I can't tell you how many conversations I have had about how do I stay my true self without being someone that I'm not. And we have all faced the same dynamic, as well as myself. And so in your path and your career, I would say for myself, it's a little bit of my background is I own a technology staffing company. We're certified and we focus on everyone, but in particular, really elevating women. And I've started a program, which Tiffany is well aware of because she was involved in one of them. It's a cost-free program, and it's to help elevate women in their careers. And I was speaking with Jordan and Tiffany right before this podcast about, kind of a challenge that I've had in my career in regards to being authentic is some people don't like some of the things that I perhaps say, right? Maybe they're statistics. It's not that I'm making them off the cuff, right? 26% of women are in IT nationally, 28% globally. And pertaining to some different areas, there's 55, I think Accenture just put out 55% of women leave before the age of 35. And so I think it's difficult to be authentic, to have a business that really promotes having women incorporated into IT when sometimes people don't see that there's an issue, they don't see there's a challenge. And so how do I move forward in that and speak about my passion, which is elevating women, to people that don't think that there's an issue? And it's really a juxtaposition between my business and who I am. And sometimes consequently, because of my beliefs, I've had to walk away and say, it's probably not the right fit. And so that's a really long way, Jordan, to answer your question. But I wanted to give a little bit of background about kind of who I am and some of my struggles. But I would tell the audience, be true to yourself, stay true to your values, and be unemotional about it, if that makes sense.
Well, and I definitely think the values come into play, right? So we, Gumption and Stratus, both of my organizations have values, and then we like to seek those values out within our organizations. Just like you said, you might end up walking away from a client because they just don't have the same view for the future or view for their internal employees as you do, and that's just not the right fit. And not always is that the best thing. I mean, I've had salespeople that are like, wait, I worked really hard for this. And I'm like, but if they're not going to allow us a seat at the table, then why do we even want to be there? Right. So I commend you for that. I'm on your journey with you. Sorry to jump in there, Tiffany.
It's so valid. And it's like, so Nicole, like, as you're talking about those challenges, right? And clearly, like, we heard the data and we know the data. And so when you look at the data, nobody's really like running initially, right, into a place where they likely will not have a seat. So I'd really like to know, in the beginning of your journey, right, as you started this journey, what actually inspired you to pursue this path?
So 2 paths, and they've come together later in my life, but originally really wanted to go to law school, believe it or not, stay and not be in IT. And ended up, long story short, when I was doing that, I got accepted to Gonzaga University and was going to be a litigator and actually litigate for women's rights, believe it or not. Ended up marrying my high school sweetheart, and my parents said, you're going to get married or you're going to go to law school. And thinking I would, of course, I was pre-law and this and that, go to law school. And I said, I'm going to get married to my high school sweetheart. And so I found myself tossed into this world of IT staffing and trying really hard to understand what that means. And just, I remember going in and everybody was men. And now I'm older, right? So I'm 52. And so I've been in this for 30 years and thinking, oh my goodness, like this is all men. Where are the women? And we're women in IT. And there were really none. I'm very little. I'm being facetious. Mm-hmm. But I've got over time really adapted to that, which is not a good thing. And it wasn't until about 5-6 years ago that I had an awakening. And there's more women in IT, obviously 26%, right? And unfortunately, I don't know if you and your listeners know this, but within STEM, within technology, there's only 18%. And of those 18%, 2.1% have declined in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And of that, only 36% of those 18% will actually practice in technology. And then if we have that fact that Accenture said about them leaving altogether at the age of 55, that leaves us in a scary place, right?
Yeah.
But getting back to the conversation is, a few years ago, 6 years ago, I saw this, heck, where are the women? What can I do? I'm in a place in my life at 52 where I can really accomplish my mission, maybe not litigate on their behalf, but I can help. And so now I stand on a platform, and we talked about, I have a podcast, Elevate Your Career, as well. But, in giving these courses to women at cost-free levels across the country, joined by CIOs and mentors and advocates, and with a 71% elevation rate, and it's people are starting to listen. This was something that I'm passionate about. And again, it's difficult because sometimes it doesn't align with my business. But I have to stand by that because that's something that I see, that I mentor on, and I speak to. And Tiffany, you and I were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, but what is so very important is that women stand by their values, who they are, to move themselves forward as examples to other women. You had mentioned whether that be 2 women, whether that be 1,000 women, hundreds of thousands of women, we all have a job to help others and pull others up and lend helping hands. And traditionally, as you know, women have not done that for one another because there's only one seat at the table, but it's time to pull up another chair for each other, to be advocates for one another.
That's it. You hit the nail on the head, because and what I love about everything that you said, but the thing that I really, really love is that you saw a problem. And what you could have done is like been better and complained, but instead you went immediately to like, okay, what can we do to solution and help change some of this? And that's where all of the amazing work that you have started has come from, is the fact that okay, there is a problem, but instead of just complaining about it, you went to a solution place and really started solutioning and coming up with ways for impact and change. I love that so much.
Yeah, and I think it's a responsibility that we all have as women. Not only you hear a lot for, and I have an 18-year-old daughter, you hear a lot for our daughters, yes, but how about for other women?
Yes.
And
Right.
we have a responsibility to each other, not to be each other's worst enemies and to fight for one spot, but to help each other. And I appreciate and applaud what you and Jordan are doing here, because I think it's helpful.
We 100% say that you need to make space, right? If you get there, then make the space, and the space is for the next chair, right? So I think the more space we have and the more space we start making at the table for other women, the better off we are, the more they see their path through their career, because maybe they're dropping out because there's not a path, right? And I would love to see the statistics behind that, of the reason why they're not staying in technology.
I have a couple of reasons. So 66% of women they leave technology because they don't see a pathway within technology to elevate themselves.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons. And then another reason is they don't see people like them at a higher level.
Yeah.
And they don't have mentors. McKinsey did a large study. I think it was a robust study with Lean In in 2022. And what they came up with was that, over 50% of women who actually have mentors are 55% more likely than their female peers to be influenced, as well as to reach that next level in their career. So there's a multitude of reasons why women don't move forward in their careers. Those are just a couple, but when we could talk about, equal pay, right? 82 cents on the dollar in many states, versus 100% for men on the dollar, or 82 to 90, I think the biggest one is 90 cents on the dollar. And I think I read something in Box or something recently. It was like some outrageous number, like 237 years women will have financial parity to men in IT, and 130 something years to be in an equitable place to men in the workplace. So pretty scary. We got to all pull together and get those numbers drastically down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that ties in really well. I mean, it goes back to kind of telling your story, right? But where or what incidents that you've experienced over your career would you say kind of changed your view and really pushed you towards, championing women, or you found gender bias and you kind of really fought it, right? So what would you say was your impactful moment? I can tell you mine, but what would you say was your impactful moment that just said, this is what I'm doing. I've been passionate about it my whole life, but now I'm going to really advocate for it.
Well, I think it was that awakening I had 6 years ago when I walked into a boardroom and I was there to lead a discussion at a publicly traded company. And on the business side, and they had their IT leaders, and there was not one woman. Tiffany's heard this story before, but I think, leaving that room and really shaking my head that, my goodness, how could we be in 2019 and not have women at the table? And what we are doing now is not working. And so let me try to do something on my own. If I could change one woman's life, that's how I started. One woman's life and the trajectory of her family, would I feel good about myself? And over 550 women later, I feel great. and it's the best thing I do. And it's really, having my family and having my children, my son, my daughter, watch the dedication that I have to fight for some things and different aspects of giving of myself. And I don't have a lot of free time, but it is one of the most important things I do, really, next to my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Nicole, you've built a position of authority and credibility, and I don't say that lightly. And I think that that's really important because in order to be able to stand and be heard time after time after time, it takes standing over and over. Maybe the first time you stand, right? You're dismissed. But guess what? When you continue to get back up and stand and continue to stand, it builds respect and it builds credibility. And I think that you've been able to do that. So what are some ways really that you've been able to build that authority and credibility in the tech industry?
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, Women in Technology of Northwest Arkansas and Gumption at my-gumption.com for their support. Their contributions are critical in bringing these meaningful conversations to you. Stick around for more engaging discussions right after this break.
That is such a good question. It really, as I give it some thought, it's really being who I am and not giving up. And I would say it's not being emotional and reactionary. I think that's the biggest challenge, at least for me, because as a woman, I'm a very emotional being, which has helped me so much in my career with good instincts and empathy. But really moving forward in the business, like you had said, and becoming someone that can influence others, it's being able to call things out in a way that is not derogatory, that it's not emotional. That I was at a speaking engagement last week, and someone had approached me after and had asked a question in the audience and wanted some additional thoughts and clarification. But the question was around how, as a woman, could we feel more heard, and women being dismissed in meetings and then sitting back in meetings and not wanting to speak up for fear of being shut down again. And so, I spoke with her and I spoke with the audience and I said, it's a really great opportunity to address people if it's one-on-one, approaching them one-on-one after the meeting and say, I felt like I was really shut down. Was there a better way I could have positioned my thought? Did I say something offensive to someone? How can I better structure and convey a message that I won't be shut down in that manner? And as well as I do, once someone says that, the person's going to be really cognizant of next time of that individual and letting them get their thoughts through. I think oftentimes what I see is men and women alike getting really aggravated and upset instead of confronting the issue in a non-emotional way, more from a learning perspective versus irritated, should I say irritated or emotional perspective. And I think that's key in moving yourselves forward. And I would attribute that a lot, Tiffany, to my success is being able to put myself in someone else's shoes and be curious rather than antagonistic or hurt.
Well, and I think curiosity, whenever you phrase it like that, like, how can I improve? I'm not coming at you with what I felt like you did to me. I'm coming at you with how can I improve? But you're going to kind of get the gist that maybe there was a little something off there.
That's
right?
Absolutely. You've nailed it. Absolutely, Jordan. And it's just like, when people come to you and ask for help, I will tell you most often people are willing to help other people. And, if you're saying, I would love your help, I would love your thoughts on this, I value your ideas. And I'll tell you, there's been a handful of times that I've come to someone and I've been turned down.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
Yeah. I 100% asking because you're already at no, right? So if you're already at no, then you should probably shoot for the yes. But absolutely. So what would you say was one of your most impactful projects? I think I kind of know, and we might harp on it just a little bit because we love it so much, but we're going to ask you in another way. What would you say is your most impactful project? Or maybe there was a project inside of your career coaching and all of that really stood out to you and you just loved it.
Yeah, from a business side, right? It was being able to walk into a business when there was a lot of doubt if I could do it, because in the field of IT, and even though, and you know this, Jordan, you own a very successful IT staffing company, but being able as a woman to walk in and sit down and really understand and create a partnership for everyone and be able to be looked at as someone that knows what they're talking about, that maybe not be able to develop and code, but that understands business, that understands people. And so I thought that was a big accomplishment of mine. People often ask, about the glass ceiling for me. And I will tell you, there was not a glass ceiling because I never saw one, and I never allowed myself, if there was, to even think twice about hitting one. And I think where the real challenges start and lie with women is that they have a fear and lack of confidence that there is a glass ceiling, or a Zoom ceiling, I guess is the new one since COVID. But if you go in with that mentality, there most definitely will be for you. And so you should go in with the mentality that I'm going to do my job and have keen insight into where you are going to go. You need to be focused on your career, not necessarily your job. Do your job, but focus on where you're going, and everything derives from that, and everything that you do should be focused around what you need to do to get to the level and to really where you want to be in life for you and your family.
Well,
Absolutely.
real quick, I don't know if you've ever heard of the book 10x is easier than 2x.
I have not.
Okay, so it's fantastic, but you just explained exactly what he explains there, right? Like to grow yourself tenfold, right? There's only a few finite ways to get there, right? Maybe 2, maybe 3. But to grow 20% every year, you have infinite possibilities. So if you always think about how you're going to get there and try to grow yourself 10x, essentially, right? You're only going to have a couple pathways to get there. So then it really outlines how you're going to get there easier, essentially faster, right? But it's a fantastic book. I think you just spoke exactly to what
that's
was
good.
the core of it.
Oh, that's great. I'll have to, I would love to read it too. Thank you.
I feel like the root of all of that, though, is that your mindset is extremely powerful, and that can take you in one direction or another, right?
Yep.
So whatever it is that you tell yourself, or whatever it is that you're feeding yourself, or whatever it is that you surround yourself with, is what you will become. It's how you will act. It's what you will believe. And so it's really, really important that we, like you said, Nicole, like if you see the glass ceiling's there, whether it's there or not, right? And so it's reminding yourself that I can do anything, and I'm going to go in, I'm going to do a great job. I'm going to do all things, right? And not all meaning like an entire plate full, but all of the things that I choose to do and I set out to do that I'm going to make happen. It's just really reining our thoughts in and our minds in and manifesting our reality, right? And I just think that sometimes that's not always easy because we have good days and bad days, right? Let's just be human here, okay? Like we don't have it all together every day, and I think that's okay too. But I think that's why it's really important to surround yourself with a community of women that when you are having the day and your mindset might be a little not as strong, that you're surrounding yourself with other women that can remind you like, hey, this is just a bad day. Like, feel your feelings. We're not going to get stuck here. We're not going to make decisions based on our feelings, right? And I remember so many amazing women in my life and so many amazing mentors. And I truthfully attribute most everything that I've done to those people that have come and taken my hand. And in those moments when I couldn't, they reminded me, or that I thought I couldn't, because remember, it's about that mindset. They reminded me, no, absolutely you can. Now get up and we're going to do this. And I'm also going to show you a few things along the way that I've learned on my path. And I think, Nicole, when I think about mentorship, you're the epitome of that, because you're not just even mentoring one-on-one, you're mentoring by the hundreds and the thousands, right? Because you've walked a path and you understand a few things because you've walked them. And so I just want to know, like, you talked a little bit about mentorship. We touched on it earlier, but I want to know what your actual thoughts on the value of mentorship, especially for women, what that looks like.
I think mentorship there's a few things that I think are the key to success for everyone, but in particular for women. It is critical that, number one, you have a network and you have mentorship. You need someone behind you for those moments, and you nailed it, Tiffany, that you have doubt, self-doubt, because as we know, 75% of women suffer from imposter syndrome. And it's just a thought in our head, versus I think the last was 25 to 30% of men. And so we're at a disadvantage, right? Just by our own mindset. And I would tell you that having someone in your corner, when I interview people or any successful CEO or president of an organization that I have come in contact with, and as you know, I interview people even on Elevate Your Career, or there's an underlying theme to each person and their success. And they've all gotten there a little bit different ways, but I will tell you, one is having mentors around you. Two is staying curious. And three is making yourself uncomfortable. We are not comfortable. Maybe I'm not comfortable originally when I was public speaking. That's the biggest fear anyone has, right? But you know what? Lean in, and it's overused, but I'm going to say it because it's meaningful. Lean into your fear. Every week, one thing, say something to someone or do an act that you normally would not find yourself doing. Because if you're not making yourself uncomfortable once a week, and it could be something like reaching out to someone perhaps, or asking for help, or, a multitude of things, and start at a small granular level and work yourself up. Because if you're not moving yourself forward and making yourself uncomfortable, you're moving backwards as a human, backwards in your career, and you're staying stagnant. So I'm a strong believer in mentorship. I think I wouldn't have gotten to the place I am without some great mentors behind me.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Public speaking is everyone's fear. Tiffany knows I'm dyslexic, so reading the prompts is probably not the best thing for me ever in my life, but it's a fear. And so she asked me to do this with her, and I love it. But I think that is everyone's biggest fear, is just taking that step, right? It's just, they need that little nudge from their group of mentors or allies or whoever that is, right? But that little nudge gets you there, and then you get some good positive feedback from that nudge, and you're like, ooh, I can do this. I got
That's
this.
Right. That's right.
And absolutely 100% agree with you there. I think that's the best thing, is just living on that fear line is like so empowering, right? So like you get that positive feedback from living there, and you're like, it's kind of like a drug, right? You're like, oh, I could do this. I could do this more.
That's right.
But what would you say has been, I think in mentoring, you give, but you also get, right? What would be the most impactful thing for you that you've received from that mentoring? Because I think it all changes with who you are talking to, right? But I think that you also learn a lot from them too.
Right. And, I've had an opportunity to be part of some pretty inspiring groups of individuals. And there's a group it's called Young Presidents Organization. It's an international organization, and I've been part of it for now, 12 years. And there's actually, I was the first woman out here in our region to be in that group. And because you had to reach a certain revenue level, and you had to be at a certain level, we'll leave it at that, but from a industry perspective. But since then, I was able to really start bringing in other women into the organization and creating this women's group within the larger group to be able to discuss issues, and kind of our own cohort within a cohort has been instrumental. And to have these women advise me and speak to me about their own challenges and how they've overcome them, both from a business perspective, family perspective, as well as, just being an executive. And so it's critical. It's been kind of our own group, our tribe, that we help one another. And it's been very, very impactful cohort for me.
And very impactful for those going through it too, by the way. So we are coming up on the end of our time. Sad face. I could sit here and talk to you all day, Nicole, just because you're so passionate. And I think It's not just the passion, it's the authenticity behind it that you don't just talk about, you model it out every single day. So, okay, if you could leave you've talked about a lot of pointers on things we need to do and stuff like that, but if you could leave just one piece of advice for a woman that was really wanting to become more than she is today, right? Not success or by anyone else's standards, but she wants to become more than what she is today. She wants to become more influential, even if it's to the 2 people versus the 22 million people, right? What piece of advice would you give her?
My advice would be to that woman is that, what is your brand? What are you known for? What do you believe you are? And start working towards that. Start working towards that on social media, meaning on LinkedIn, your professional network. Practice what you preach. Show up who you want to be and work on that each and every day. And guess what? Once people see your passion, and it could be within technology, it could be something totally abstract, but they'll start identifying you with that. And that will propel you to want to do more and get to whatever your dream is, focusing on your career, not your job. But we all have to put work into, and sometimes it's hard. We're all working really hard and taking that time to do that and put that work in. But it's a must, and it's gotta be something that you're dedicated to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been so amazing talking to you. Like Tiffany said, I look forward to following back up at some point because I've been extremely inspired today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you for coming. Thank you to all of our listeners. Continue to tune in. We will add in Nicole's LinkedIn information at the end of this episode. You will also see, we'll put in the information for her podcast as well, Elevate Your Career. If you are really looking to go to the next level, you need to get in touch with Nicole. So thank you again for your time today. See you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, that's a wrap. Another episode of Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast. Thanks for tuning in and sharing this time with us. If you liked what you heard, please share this episode with your friends in tech. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us keep bringing in inspiring guests and uncovering topics that matter to you. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and making your mark in the tech world. Goodbye for now.